Seventh grade, as the teacher, was most kids in that world in Kansas City were homeschooled till they reached seventh grade, or they went to a public school. And there was a little minority of kids that came up through that Christian school. So I don't know why, but the culture beforehand created a myriad of education forms. But they all gelled into, when they got to seventh grade, suddenly they all showed up. And so I got this hodgepodge of kids, some that were, let's have chapel and slay the devil over the township of Grandview today. And, okay, calm down. And then you had kids that were like, there's no devil. It's just, what are you talking about? There's no devil. And then you had the kids that I, growing up, couldn't stand because they were always right. So to me, that was Diane, a girl in my class growing up, which we've since reconciled. But at our 40th classroom reunion, it was, I walked in, I moved from Rochester, moved there, instantly started teaching when school started, and looked out and had no clue of anyone's background and had to pick it up as I went along. So I had no history with them, and people were telling me, matter of fact, when I started, I had all sorts of parents and teachers that said, "You're the new seventh grade teacher?" I said, "Yes." "Oh, I'll be praying for you." So why? And then a couple of them said, "Well, I'm sorry." I said, "What are you sorry for?" I said, You'll see." So it's a great way to start a job. Is apologies. But one of the great things about the school is that what you were talking about, that they didn't hold back on anything that had to do with the supernatural. So that was, we were the bizarre school in the district of all the Christian schools. There was some Baptists, there was a lot of Baptists, there was a couple of Presbyterians, and then Kansas City Christian and other ones, and a couple of them had spirit-filled churches they were connected to, but the school itself didn't go there. And so we went there with everything. Chapel kids are slain in the spirit, they're praying for healing, little kindergarten kids are laying hands on people, and worship was a big part of it. So this wonderful culture that I stepped into, at the same time, I stepped into a culture that had to, as a teacher, I had to, anytime you get in front of people, you better know who your audience is. You don't come to high school kids trying to teach them like you would some adult individuals 30 and above, because they're 30 and above, they've already decided, I'm here because I want to learn. They're there because they have to be there. And it's a different mindset. So to know the mindset and to know the heart. And I'm looking at Luke 15, and this concept really helped me to understand how to pastor, how to be a pastor. And I'm talking about creating a positive learning culture, but Don did so well that I tweaked it all through the times. So I don't want to reissue this thing. Oops, pamphlet. Oh, here we go. Did I lose both of them or just this one? Just that one, okay. For those, all right. So in Luke 15, it starts off, to me, I see Jesus is such a great storyteller, and I see these stories, and I see what, maybe what was added to it. And at the end of chapter 14, that night, I see the guys around a campfire, and Jesus has this smirk on his face. And they're, it's like, if you look for it in between there, it's not there. And they're going, what's going on with Jesus? He's smiling. He goes, I know, what? That's weird. Jesus, what's going on? He goes, tomorrow. Can't wait for tomorrow. He says, what's tomorrow? He says, I've waited forever for tomorrow. Now, Jesus is actually the only one that can actually say, I've waited forever. You go, what's tomorrow? He goes, tomorrow is Luke 15. They'd look over at Luke, who's like, I don't know what he's talking about. It's like, Luke 15, what's he mean? And he goes, tomorrow I'm going to unveil my Father. And if you can imagine being Jesus, who spent all eternity with the Father, and now he's 10 years old in the synagogue, and he hears the scribes and Pharisees talking about his Father wrongly all the time. And he can't do anything about it. He has to shut his mouth. At 12, he peeps a little bit, and he's back in the womb, so to speak. And he has to wait another 18 years until he can get up. And then now he's going to unveil the Father, who's been mistaken by all creation forever. And he gets to show what his Father's really like. But it's not, he picks the time, I think, because of the people in front of him. So it says then all the tax collectors and sinners came near. So you've got tax collectors and sinners. And the word for sinners here is, it's an interesting Greek word that's used all through the New Testament. It means sinner and harlot. So it's really tax collectors and prostitutes. And then the next verse says, and the scribes and Pharisees. So we got the scribes and Pharisees on one side, and Jesus is looking out. The scripture is really clear. It's the word of God. Jesus is the word of God. He brought this truth to us to listen to and go, okay, when he wants to reveal the Father, he puts in front of him tax collectors and sinners, and then scribes and Pharisees, and then puts a line down, and he knows exactly who's in front of him. So knowing exactly who's in front of him, he decides this is the point where I want to unveil my Father, because I want my Father's influence to touch the vastness of who's in front of me. And so the first story, he talks about a sheep. And the sheep is, sorry for my not even junior high drawing, but that's exactly how we all learned to draw a house when we were young. And you put a little smoke, and you got your door. And I always had a round window. I don't know why, but I always had a round window. And there we go. The door looks like a hobbit door, but there you go. So the sheep is in, he gets all the others together, and in my brain I go, the sheep just says to the other sheep, I'm breaking out of here, man. So what are you doing? Breaking out of here. Well, why? We have such a good shepherd. He leads us to great water. He takes us to, he doesn't take us to the other side of the hill. Do you ever notice that? There's probably better water there. That's where he goes. I don't ever see it. No, I don't know. And he goes, well, he keeps us safe from the wolves. He says, well, have you ever seen a wolf? That's just a manipulation tactic of people in leadership. What they do is they put a spirit of fear into you so you don't venture out and become free. And there's no such thing as wolves. And it's like, okay. And I like it here. And he goes, so I'm breaking out. So he just breaks out a little pen. Come on, guys, with me. And they're like, no, man, you're an idiot. So he goes out on his own. And we know the story that he comes and looks. There's 99. He counts them. He keeps them safe. He goes out after the one which is lost. And he pursues the one which is lost. And he finds it. And in my brain, I just think of this little sheep out there on the other side of the hill going, oh my gosh, there's cliffs. there's briars. There's prickers. What's that sound? There's wolves. And you just see him going into the little thorn bush, hiding in as best as he can. And I in my mind, I picture one of the scribes and Pharisees saying, Jesus, can I finish the story? Yeah, go ahead. And so the Pharisee finishes the story by finding the sheep, getting a stick and beating him, pulling him out of the thorn bush and getting him ripped up, breaking his leg so he'll never run away again, dragging him back and throwing him in front of the other sheep. And no. Again, that's extra biblical. It's not in there, but in my mind, that's how they want the story to end. And then he goes, well, actually, no. Actually, he finds him in the thorn bush. He puts his back against the thorn, and the shepherd gets his back ripped up for the sake of the sheep. He bloodies himself to pull him to safety. Puts him on his shoulders, puts his hooves to his heart so he can hear his heartbeat, carries him back, sets him down, and says, let's have a party. And at the end of that story, the tax collectors and sinners are like, party? We know party. That's awesome. And so they're all enthused about that. And these guys are just like, I don't get it. And then the next story he gives them is the story of a coin. This old woman has a coin. It's missing, and it's one of 10 coins, which a number of different scholars kind of think it's a part of a necklace. Having 3 daughters and a wife and no sons, I know about necklaces and shoes and hair. I know about coordinating outfits. I didn't beforehand. I once wore 2 different plaids when I was, I think, 18.
You were breaking out.
That's right. Well, up here I was, yeah. Yeah. Not good complexion. Anyway, so the coin, if you're wearing a coin, it has, each one is it's a drachma, and each one is very expensive. So if you've got 10 coins around here, I can ask the ladies, if you're missing one, you probably won't wear it, right? I mean, if it's just out there missing, it'll go, everyone's just going to look at the missing thing. So they take a very expensive, shiny, bright object, put it in a drawer, and it gets covered with dust. And then we come to a third story, which is about a younger son, and another one included is an older son. And he did this perfectly because he's perfect. He's looking out there going, and we talk about, well, the father just came and he ran to the older son, or to the younger son, which is true. And it's very true. But he ran to the younger son, not the older son, because the younger son had been away. And so you have a story of, and he's looking out and he goes, it's so varied, humanity. In this one, you have the sheep that left the house and got lost. Then you have the coin that's lost in the house. Then you have the younger son who left the house and got lost. Then you have the older son who lives in the house and is lost. So he's looking out there going, they're all lost in front of me. Some are lost because they've left and rebelled. Some are lost because they've grown up in a religious system. And so I step in to this group going, some here have been lost their whole life. They have no clue who God is. So therefore, I'm pastoring them into the understanding of a loving God. Some that have been in religion for years, in spite of the fact that it's good and it's God, after a while you can get religious in the goodness of God, which drives me crazy. You know, it's like John Eldridge in Wild at Heart talks about the posers who come to church, and a guy is about ready to leave his wife. How's it going? Oh, great. How's your family? Oh, we're doing wonderful. And he never admits to anyone the fact that his marriage is breaking apart, and he's not going to see his kids probably for the next year because he's found some hottie down in Florida. So, you know, sorry. So I also taught college age for years. So there we go. They relate to that. So I step in front and I look and I go, I see this story, and what it does is the whole thing is not the story of the prodigal son. Chapter 15 is the story of the father. And when the son, even when he runs to his son, the fact of the matter is the culture of the day, Jewish culture was that men didn't run. Women ran, children ran, and servants ran, but men didn't run. The only time a man would run, he would gird up his loins, tuck it in, and he'd run into battle. Otherwise, it is a shame to expose the knees of a man, which for some men it still is, but that's okay. Sorry, thinking about the beach this summer. So he girds up his loins, and for the son to see his father running, he only has one conclusion, is that I'm going to die because he's at war. He's not thinking because he doesn't know his father. That's the thing. They don't know the father. So they have the understanding. So in their mind, relationship is taken a second place and religion is first. Our culture should be relationship, but the culture becomes activities and rules. When activity and rules goes over relationship, you think God's out to kill you. When you know the heart of God, then when God does something you don't understand, you still know it's good. And so we, as teachers / pastors, the idea that do we make our kids behave and feel that they have to behave in order to belong? Or do we make our kids feel like, as if they belong and then let God take care of the behavior. And one invites them to our hearts, the other one makes them wary of our thoughts. If they know the heart of the teacher, like the heart of the father, if they know that, then anytime we run towards them, they'll never, ever think that we're out to get them. They'll always know something good's coming. And so in my heart was to create a culture in my classroom where my kid, I'm still, I have ownership of my heart, where my kids know they're loved no matter what. That to me was priority number one. If I get them to know they're loved, is the same thing in 1 John. We love because he first loved us. Well, another translation says, my ability to love is based on how I know I'm loved. Wow. If I know I'm loved, I am free to love. If I don't know I'm loved, I have to fight for it, and I'm always unsure. And so my first priority entering that class is to have an understanding of who's in front of me, what extreme, where are they on the scale of their life and their understanding of God and their expression toward God, and then to then find the language for the individual to get to their heart so that our connection is of the heart and not the book. In 1 Corinthians 4, it talks about there's many teachers, not many fathers. Actually, the line is there's 10,000 teachers, but not many fathers. So it's not like there's 7 teachers and only 1 father. It's 10,000. And teaching brings knowledge, but fathering changes culture. And so for me, again, Don was masterful at just going through the aspects of culture, and it's I want your notes. Really good. The one thing that you get to, okay, so it sounds good. It sounds good in theory. What does it mean to change a culture? The joy I have almost, I won't say almost weekly because it's been a long time now, but for a long time it was weekly and sometimes multiple times a week. I'd get memos. And now with Facebook, when that came into being, then it was quite a bit. Former students who wanted to stay in touch because they said, we always knew you loved us. And kids saying, I was a jerk, but that didn't matter to you. It was my heart. And so my greatest successes in life, not tooting my horn, but the greatest successes weren't that I got through the book. When I first got there, I had a number of parents saying, there's a lot of spiritual activity here, and our kids don't get through the books all the time. We're not sure that they are learning everything they're supposed to learn. And so I said, well, I answered it rightly. I've never not gotten through a book, so let's give it a shot and see what happens. And so the first year, there's one course that I did not finish. And I just felt so guilty. I felt horrible. How can I not finish a book? And my role was to teach everything. I taught grammar, history, algebra, science, and in seven, and the whole curriculum. And at the end of the year, I had kids crying and holding me, and parents are like, oh, I've never done that. What happened? You didn't get through the book? But my son is crying. And he was one of the ones that I was told in the beginning of the year, watch out for him because he's trouble. And so I called him up to my desk after day one. At the end of the first day, I called him up to my desk, and he was pushing me through the day. And I could see, I could see how that could look that way. And the kids were grinding. He said, yeah, Mr. Dupr'e? We're ready to get going. I said, I don't think you're trouble. He goes, what? He goes, you're trying to give me, pushing back on me today, but I don't think that's your heart. I think I see you. And he just kind of smiled. He goes, what do you see? I said, I see a really good kid that feels a lot of peer pressure to do something different. But I like the kid I saw today. That was the last day he pushed back. He ended up top of the class. He now owns a business and hires scores of people in his business. And the principal had gone from teaching my class, or he'd gone from teaching my class to the principal that year. So he's the one that brought me in and said, yeah, this guy's big trouble. You're going to have a lot of problems with him. He was bad all year long, and no matter how hard I came down on him, he just never turned. I mean, I had one or two little things where the kid was being a 7th grade kid, which means that since a child's brain, especially a boy, doesn't develop to the late 20s, he was half-brained. So I understand that. So in the process of doing that, one of the things that I did with the kids, and which was a lot of fun, was what if they come into my class and I am the delegated authority in their life, which are terms that by the time they get to junior high, they've heard 1,000 times, which is not wrong, it's just that they've heard it 1,000 times. If they come into my classroom, there's two values. It's their values, which are all over the place depending on the moment. At one point in time, the girls' values are, 7th grade girls, they always go in groups, and they go to the bathroom laughing, they come back crying. And two girls aren't talking to each other for the rest of the day. So I don't know what, values are up and down. Yeah. So and there's their world, and then there's his world. And we got it, he was forcing us into his world. So I kind of took two things, was to create to get them to say, what do they want to see accomplished this year? If they don't own it, it's my accomplishment. But if they own it, then it shifts the culture a little bit different to our classroom instead of my classroom. So I have kids, then they take their own piece of paper and they make up the things that they think, and I put it in terms of God terms. I said, what do you think, how do you think what God wants you to learn this year or be a part of this year? I mean, what's in your heart towards that? And I steered it that way because, a 7th grade boy is just going to say stupid things, and I want to try to omit that and get it down. And then so that we've got now, however many of the classes, and let's say there's 25 in the class, and so I then go up, I say, okay, now let's talk about let's put those together, and what do we all share together? And suddenly we end up with a shared vision that the kids have ownership in. And they help write it. So when one kid is kind of like push it against one thing, and they'll look over and say, hey, we talked about, oh yeah, we did. And so they're policing themselves into this whole thing, which is kind of fun. So you're not always cop in class. And in junior high, depending on where they've come from, boy, it's that real combination of teaching and godly control, trying to get their little brains to stay connected with you. But taking their shared vision and doing it together it's so much fun, because you end up with this every year. I end up with this great vision that the kids have ownership with. And I didn't do it the first year, but have great kids, they have ownership with it, and so they track themselves by this beautiful, you get someone to do some calligraphy and you put it over in the corner of the blackboard or the whiteboard, whatever you're using, and it sits there and it says our vision for this year. And even put the year so that they was like, wow, this is special to us. And it's just very cool. So how do you then, a vision is, it sounds great, and then they show up at 8. So it doesn't always sink in. And so there were just one of the things that became real clear to me, and I'm going to do my best to make this look like a screen. Never was an art teacher. Matter of fact, all I ever drew in art class was fighter jets, because that was the only thing that actually I could draw that actually looked like something. Remember my teacher telling me, Miss and Mrs. Freeman, why do you always draw fighter jets? I said, I don't draw other things well. And so she had me draw these other things, and I showed it to her. She goes, Yeah, you're right. She was right. So, if we have these values that we whatever kind of value that it might be, that we draw together, the things that are important to you, that you want to make accomplished in class. I finally got it of how to help myself do this. And there's time. Actually, let me do it over here. There's time, energy, and money. You can say resources, but bottom line, it almost always comes down to money. And people they come in, I saw it with a young gal who got out of college, and she came in to teach her first year, and she had a list of values that were so important to her, and she was going to do them. I remember as the first week with teachers gathered, no kids there yet, and she already had this thing on the board, the values for my class, and this is kind of what we're going to do. And about a month later, the thing was off the board, and she spent at the end of every day she was crying. And the fact of the matter was that if you have a value, whatever it is, value number 1, value number 2, value number 3, that you have in your life and have in your classroom and you want to do, and it hits this screen, it's going to have to either take time, energy, or money to make it happen. Whatever, and usually with kids, it's time and energy. And you run out of energy after a while, and they don't get that, or I don't have the time now, and you don't make the time, and then you keep butting up against this thing with something that's of real value, and it doesn't make it to the other side, which is, if it does make it through that, it's a real value. If it doesn't make it through that, it's what I call a desired value. I desire it, but when I hit time, energy, or money, it's just too much, and I don't want to go through it to get to it. But the fact of the matter is, on the other side of here are changed kids. And they're waiting for us to deal with our lack of something. And sometimes we just need to say, hey, I have a problem with blank, and have your other teachers gather around you and pray. And for me, one of those things, I had to have a group of people that prayed for me and fasted with me to break a stronghold that was hindering me from giving away time, because I was pulled in so many directions. I then became the owner of my time, and I gave people increments of minutes. God didn't own my time, I did. And I needed that broken from me. So anyway, so the values for me, and now it's just gone over in my own life, just in how I live my life. And it's just made all the, I realize that these things are there to purify and make it real in my life. I don't know how that fits in. For me, it's a very, very practical way to kind of go about some things. And then I had some, I'm going to have kind of end here with some bullet points. So the thing that the Lord had said to me was, I want you to create success in your kids right away. I want them to feel successful immediately. If they start to school and don't feel successful for a long time, they're going to live under the fact that they are not successful and they're losers. And someone maybe already has told them that they're a loser. So my job was to find where they were, give them something that gives them success. And it could be just a silly test. And one of the things I used to do was a culture test, the culture of the day. Well, what name of the band that has an electric current in the band's name? AC/DC. And they go like, yeah, I know that. So at the end of day one, they're happy as a clam. They have succeeded that day. And then I didn't do the same kind of thing, but I did little things, and I would call on kids that I knew the answer so that they could answer it successfully. As opposed to, okay, does anybody know the answer? Sally, of course I do, sir. I know everything. You know, and so little Billy's over there dying because he didn't know the last two answers, but I know he knows this one because we talked about it. And so who was the first president, Billy? Oh, it's George Washington, of course. Of course it was. Thank you, son. And so find ways to create success on a daily basis so that they feel successful daily. And it's really nice to have a gratitude board. If you haven't had one, it's good, or a place that that you but other kids can write, and it can be taken off if it's not right, and so you're really strict with it. But I only had one kid that wrote something kind of deflammatory, apologized later. Besides that, the gratitude board was just who you appreciate that day. Kids would come up and they come up, I really appreciate Tom. He helped me with this math thing and now I understand it. And suddenly you're up there, it's up there. And the kids see it every day. And it changes, you know, it gets filled up as the week goes on, and boom, there's another new one that starts the week. And it's really easy, just gratitude board, there it is, come on up. And the kids can't wait after a while to praise somebody else. Because they are so insecure about who they are. 7th and 8th grade, I mean, come on. Your body's changing, your voice is changing. I remember when my voice, you know, it's just I had no control. And I was really embarrassed. I was this really good athlete and no control over my voice. And my body's weird and the girls are taller now. What happened there? And, you know, just the whole thing. And for them to suddenly feel secure enough to praise other people, that's a great one. You know, we weep with those that weep and we rejoice with those that rejoice. Most of us are good with weeping with other people because we're at a stronger point then. We're not really great at rejoicing because I want what you just got. You know, so it teaches them at an early age how to rejoice with others. So the Lord just said, create a culture of joy. So so when they come into you look forward to joy. And so, you know, there's a movie that brings you joy. You can't wait to watch that movie. Honey, you've seen that movie 20 times. I know. I can't wait for 21. You know, and so we're all like that. I'll just be honest. I love You've Got Mail. I'm a guy, but I love that movie. I look forward to it. It's on again. Of course it's on again. It's on every day. But I still like to watch it. So you look forward to things that bring you joy. So create an atmosphere where it's joyful. One of the things that I used to do is there's a song that came out years ago. Da 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 da. So I just say to the kids, da da da, and they all go da 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 da, and then I would give off one phrase, da 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 da, and I'd write it out, da da da, and so each time they're looking exactly what I'm writing, and they think they're playing a game and they think they've got control. They don't have control. I'm perfectly in control. I'm just having fun. I'm giving them joyful. And they're going down and they're all looking at what I'm writing because now it's a different atmosphere in the room. I would encourage other teachers when I became a pastor and was also teaching and pastoring at the same time, I said, get out of your classroom between classes and say hi to other kids. Don't let them think that you're the big bad 9th grader or 9th grade teacher or the big bad 6th grade teacher and they're in 4th grade. And like, he looks so mad all the time. Get out there and say, hey, how are you? Come on, give me a high five. And then one of the things I always do with the kids, give me a high five. And they go to give me a high five and I just go like this. And the instant I do that, then they get their I've got KES on, jump ready. And so they're doing everything they can to jump as high as they can in the hallway between classes, and the kids around them are laughing, and all I did was this. You know. But suddenly there's this atmosphere of joy that's created between classes. Have principals visit the classes not to evaluate teachers, but to infuse the vision of the school in a joyful way. I'll tell you, when a principal walks into class, it's like, whoa, you know, and depending on, Mr. Peck, we need to talk later. You know, he feels bad. The kids are scared because it's probably going to talk about me as opposed to, hi, I just want to say hi. Oh, hi, Mr. Peck, hi. Are you guys having a good day? Yeah, that's okay. 1 to 10, you take literally 30 seconds and suddenly, okay, I'm going to come back here and whatever. I'll be back tomorrow. Whatever it is, just doing something spontaneous moments. I have teachers that I have them switch classes. Says, can you teach Algebra 1? I said, yeah. Do you teach grammar? Sure. Let's switch today. So suddenly it's time for class, the bell rings, I walk in. Hi guys, what are you doing here? We're having a teacher. Just like Pastor Swamp Pulpits, we're teaching today. And suddenly that subject suddenly is magnified in importance. Just for that one day. There are all these little things. But I would also, every now and then I'd say, I tell a kid who I know has struggled with something and finally learned it, I'd say, here, come up here and teach that. I want you to, you're the teacher for the next 15 minutes. Okay. And they come up and then they suddenly put something on the board and they feel great because they're in that role now. They're giving something out. So for me, a value is, it's so important for me to know that they're loved, that they're cared for, that they're important. Yes, I just be honest with you, I didn't have discipline problems. I never had discipline problems. We just had fun. We had a good time, and I love the fact that, and I've married some of my students, not in the wrong way, in the best of ways. They invite me to their home to stay. I get something weekly from my kids. I stopped teaching in '95, and I get something almost weekly from one of my kids. So I love them. And so I have literally one bullet points I'm going to give you. 7 takeaways that I want my students to have when they leave my world. Number 1, that the student feels loved, respected, and cared for. Number 2, that the students come away with a desire to be a lifelong student and remain curious. But I tell you, if we are about rules and information, they will not remain curious. They really won't. Number 3, that the students have developed an individual work ethic that will carry them into the future, and which is connected to the next one, that they've learned to be problem solvers. Problems will always be there, but they're there to be solved. Next one is the students has learned that understanding concept is more important than memorizing facts. Understanding concepts is more important than memorizing facts. Number 6, the student is aware of the importance of social skills and is desirous of being a positive influence when they leave this place. That's the one that you have to model and you have to speak into. And number 7, I said it earlier, kids need to not feel that they have to behave in order to belong. We need to make them feel that they belong, and if we do, God will take care of the behave part. So Don, thank you for your teaching on culture. It was awesome, and it led me to leak out into other areas today. So that's it on my end. Any thoughts or questions?
I would just say that the thing that turned our school around with that one boy was what we call social contract, which you called your
Yep.
your social. That was one of the things that we learned. So yeah.
It's intentional.
Yeah.
And with that social thing of going out, that's not, you cannot be subtle, but if you don't speak it and you're not intentional with it, sometimes they don't catch it. So you can be subtle with how you're at. Don't they see how I act? Yeah, of course they see how you act. They expect you to be perfect. And they expect themselves not to be. So you're inviting them into something and you're being intentional about it. That's awesome. Anybody else? All right. Thank you.